The lifeblood of any collegiate sport is recruiting, and the entire Notre Dame football staff has been very busy recruiting since the season-ending USC game. They've been out on the road recruiting and back in the office making all of those important contacts, connections, and decisions involving the class of recruits that will sign in February. Joining us now to talk about all the nuts and bolts that go into recruiting is Notre Dame's Director of Football Recruiting, Aaryn Kearney.
Aaryn, welcome. It's great to have you. I always learn something when we do segments with our guests, and I just have learned I've been misspelling your first name.
That's okay.
So that's why I can't get emailed to you. I'm misspelling the first name.
You're not in the minority there.
Yeah, it's got a Y in there. Well, thanks for doing this.
Absolutely.
I know your periods are your time is always busy. This is a dead period, correct?
Correct.
So what does that mean?
Well, really, it basically means that our coaches can't have any face-to-face contact with prospects either on or off campus. So we're still allowed one phone call a week, and they can still send text messages and DMs through social media, but no face-to-face contact.
Okay. When is that over? How long does that last?
The specific date, I want to say it ends. It's a Thursday in January, like the 10th or 11th, somewhere around there. So we have about 2-3 more weeks of it before we kind of crank back up on the road.
Yeah, it essentially goes dead for the bowl season, right?
Correct.
Through the end of the national championship. So this is a year-round campaign, right? I mean,
no doubt.
You're focused on evaluating sophomores and establishing relationships with juniors and recruiting seniors. How do you set that out? What's the strategy for sort of building the calendar?
Sure. Well, kind of like you said, it never ends. I always use September 1st as probably a good starting point for kind of our cycle, because that's when we can initially contact juniors and start, sending them correspondence through mail and email and getting them on campus and that type of thing. So we kind of have a 75-week mail campaign that we start on September 1st, and that goes all the way through signing day on that first Wednesday in February each year. So we really start September 1st, and there's a lot of work that goes in, before that, identifying guys and making sure we have our list ready to go. So like you said, it's a never-ending process, but we use September 1st as kind of the starting point in the recruiting cycle.
There are several sort of major milestone events during that.
Sure.
And one of them just happened with the Echoes weekend. Tell us about how that weekend is structured.
Sure. Well, it's a big official weekend for us. We obviously want to push all of our committed players to that weekend. All of them had been on campus before, unofficially coming to games or a camp, but we kind of push them to come to that weekend because it allows them to be around our coaches a lot. Our coaches aren't obviously preparing for a game on those weekends, so it kind of maximizes their time to spend with their families, be around them, and really get a better feel for what goes on at Notre Dame. While games are obviously a big selling point, that's not reality every day at Notre Dame, so it's fun to have them in on a non-game weekend where they can spend time with our players and get a feel for campus and kind of what goes on a day-to-day basis.
And it certainly accomplished that. You had a great turnout this year, and I know I got to spend time around a lot of the guys. What activities do they do? What do they participate in while they're here?
Sure. So we had 12 official visitors on campus. 8 of those guys were commits, like we just talked about. It all really starts on Friday with our Echoes event, our team awards banquet over in the DeBartolo Performing Arts Center. So that was kind of the key thing on Friday. A lot of those guys would fly into Chicago early in the morning and get over here around lunchtime. If none of them had been met with an academic person on campus, we set up some meetings with them to meet with either a business professor or someone over in FTT, depending on what their interests were. So we kind of knocked those things out Friday afternoon. And then had everyone go to the awards ceremony on Friday night. Saturday was a little bit more of a football day where we can come over to the office. The guys would meet with the coaches, talk about X's and O's, and then really get to meet the other key support staff people from strength and conditioning to nutrition. Let them spend time with our players a little bit that day. We brought over some of our up-and-coming seniors and a couple younger guys in sort of a player panel format, so the guys could ask questions from those guys along with their parents. And then, of course, people that are going to impact them, like Ron Paulus, who does player development and works with those guys a lot. So just letting them touch kind of each area of the program and become more familiar with them. It was kind of Saturday night without there being a basketball game on campus per se. We had dinner over, ironically, in the basketball arena up in the club area there, which was fun to do. Then they, of course, get to go out with the guys at night, get a feel for the dorms and what life is like on campus here. And then Sunday we really ended it. We like to, the guys that are uncommitted, that haven't maybe been here and seen everything before, end their visit with meeting Coach Kelly on Sunday morning before they take off. All of our guys stayed here on campus at the Morris Inn, which is kind of another draw to come after the season, so they can stay on campus there and kind of experience that kind of cool spot on campus. We don't get to use it quite as much in the season. So they meet with Coach there, have breakfast, and then they're kind of out around noon. So that's kind of that 48-hour window that the NCAA lets us have kids on campus during an official visit.
And getting them out at noon this year was a little harder than it is most times. You were your own travel agency, I understand.
Yeah, it was a little challenging. My phone started going off about 8 o'clock on Saturday night as flights got canceled out of Chicago. So I was working with the travel agency into the early morning hours on Saturday, Sunday morning to kind of rearrange things. We ended up flying a lot of guys out of Indianapolis. The snow line was kind of between here and there, and let guys get out of there pretty effortless.
Good. So much about this changes all the time. I mean, it's such a competitive area, but social media has had such an impact on recruiting and
Absolutely.
continues to accelerate. How do you use it, and is it also how much of a resource is it for gathering information about what's going on with kids?
Yeah, it's definitely twofold. I think early in the process, you're just trying to gather kids' social media handles and gather all that information so come September 1st, you can start contacting them and making sure that you're sending them information. And we kind of carry over our mail campaign and what we send in the mail into social media a little bit. So it's not quite as full-fledged as that, but we use it as a way to send graphics and information out to recruits as well, because at the end of the day, they always have their phone. They're always able to get that information, and you're not for sure if they're ever always getting everything you send them in the mail. Sometimes you're sending it to school, sometimes you're sending it to homes. Kids' addresses change and whatnot. So we do utilize the social media aspect, and now that we can text message, I think the social media has become a little bit more as an informative piece to send that graphic information, where the text messaging has become more of your interaction thing to kind of communicate with them per se.
And I assume part of assessing somebody's fit here is evaluating what they're doing with social media, right?
Yeah, you can find out a lot, good and bad, about guys. What their interests are, one, to use that information when they come to campus, but then two, what their language is, what they're saying about other people, what they're commenting on schools, visits. You see a lot throughout the process, throughout following a guy's social media account. So, and it's them, and it's their their interaction with other teammates, and some of those times they obviously don't always realize who's watching, but we definitely are. Our coaches, us, we have a big staff to kind of keep an eye on all that. So it's definitely telling when you really dig into it, if you take the time to do so.
Yeah, and your job's a little bigger because you got to recruit coast to coast, Florida to California to Washington to Maine.
Yep.
And that's got to make it a little more challenging, especially coordinating our travel out.
Sure, it does make it challenging, but it's fun at the same time. I think that's one of the draws about being at Notre Dame, is that you're going to be with kids from coast to coast, and that's part of the appeal. I think a lot of times, and a big sell for us, is that you're going to make friendships and relationships with kids from all over the country, and you're not going to be the only one that's a long ways from home. A lot of kids are in the same boat. Right.
Tell us about how you've got the office organized. What are the functions that we divide people up with responsibilities for?
Yeah, so we have it fairly streamlined. Dave Poloquin, who's been involved in the football office for a number of years, is our director of player personnel, and Dave really oversees the evaluation process. So gathering those names and who we're wanting to target, and he works with the coaches in making sure film is watched and kind of who we're offering, managing the roster. And then myself, I kind of oversee our actual recruiting office, and inside of that we have Jasmine Johnson, who's our on-campus recruiting coordinator, and she really does a fantastic job, does all of our compliance work, which is a tall task and sometimes kind of monotonous, but one of those things that has to be done and very detailed to do it correctly. And then she really is responsible for all of our student help. And we have kind of at any given time, I guess, a pot of about 50 students that we have access to that we've vetted and interviewed and hired into our office. We have about 10 of those that work during the week and help us with mailings and printing out things and running errands on campus, and anything from sorting mail to filling up the fridge for the coaches and that type of thing. So our students are very valuable. She does all the coordination of their schedules and who's working where, and does a really good job in that regard. And then on top of that, we have Grant Apgar, who is our social media director. Grant does all of our football social media graphics, anything that is graphic related in our office. And then the final piece to it is Laura Thomas, and Laura does all of our social media accounts. So anything that goes out on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, Laura has a handle in that, and obviously works hand in hand with Mike Birch in our sports information department.
Now, for any listeners who may be as old as me, they're probably not sure what graphics contemplates in this area. So tell us a little bit about the sort of work Grant does.
Yeah, so there's a number of things that he does. I would say his probably primary focus is social media, just because kids are so active on that. So any graphic or image that you see of someone that's being tweeted out on our social media accounts, Grant's the one that designs those, and he's got a good marketing background, so he kind of understands the process and what kids are looking for a little bit, which I think helps. And then he'll also do individual graphics. If a kid we're recruiting has a birthday, we want to give him a little love through social media, so we'll send a graphic of him maybe posed in Notre Dame Stadium or somewhere on campus that just shows that we're acknowledging his birthday and something that hopefully he is excited about, and he'll retweet that out and put it on a social media account to show that Notre Dame's kind of after him. So those are the two probably biggest things that he does. And then on top of it, he also helps our coaches with just things that they need from week to week in the season, helping them with covers for playbooks and different things that come up, so that everything just looks streamlined and nice and has a kind of a branded, consistent look across the board.
You do this job so effectively and represent us so well. What do you like most about it, and what do you like least about it?
Maybe the same answer, I think, a little bit, which is kind of ironic. But I think just meeting all the families that come through here, it's really interesting to see all the different backgrounds, and that goes in with recruiting nationwide, right? You meet so many kids and different people from different backgrounds. At the same time, that's challenging. It is also kind of difficult because they're all coming from different places, and so each person is unique, and you have to treat them unique because everyone has different needs and different locations and different things that kind of affect their recruiting. So it's kind of twofold a little bit. There's other challenge-wise. Just really depends. I think, that was the first thing that came to mind, just with having a big weekend last weekend and dealing with kind of so many different situations. I guess that's what I'd say.
Despite I know what can be some real challenges given the logistics and everything else you got going on, you do it exceptionally well. You're a big reason why we're able to get the right young men here that they can represent this university and help make us a good football team. So thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
For Notre Dame. Thanks for being here tonight. Go Irish.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jack.
We'll be back in a minute.